the recording button at the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So a small gap in this thing is that who can accept public deposits? Not everyone can accept a public deposit, especially after the Unregulated Deposits Act, that was passed 2 years ago. There are lots of restrictions on accepting any kind of public deposit. So any kind of deposit, if they are accepting, or any kind of borrowing that they have, if it is exceeding 50 crore. So we all know that if from any bank also, if there is a term loan or any kind of facility, if it is more than 50 crore, there are certain restrictions now, forensic audit and other things that are mandatory now. So this is almost in line with that. So that kind of entities actually become level 1 as of now. And then holding and subsidiary entities of any of the above. Interesting question is we are talking about holding and subsidiary entities of any of the above. Let's pause for a minute, pause for 5 seconds and think of it as to how it can be a holding or subsidiary. Let us take an example. Okay, I have company A Limited. So company A Limited, question number 1, whether it can invest in partnership, whether it can invest in LLP. In LLP Act, there is a restriction that it cannot invest in LLP to a certain extent, and by what means and things like that. Say, for example, it is a member of a cooperative society, or if it is a it is investing in a partnership firm. Does the partner? How does this partnership firm become? How does the partnership firm become subsidiary? So subsidiary is by virtue of control. So if for the company Ind AS or AS is applicable, and by virtue of it, if we are determining it to be a subsidiary, then it will be automatically it will be a level 1 entity. We will take a reverse case where partnership firm is holding shares in a company to the extent of more than 51%, for example. So if it is holding for more than 51%, then though for partnership firm, consolidation is not applicable as of now. However, if it says that if holding is actually 51% or more, the next question to be asked is whether partnership firm also, because by virtue of this will become level 1 entity. So AS 21 and 23 are there. So whether it will be applicable, that will be the next question to think about, whether then consolidation will have to be done by the partnership firm. That's not much clarified in the announcement, but that's one of the questions that can be opened up.
Ma'am, will you hold for a minute? Our chairman, Manish Gadia sir, has
Sure,
joined.
Sure,
so
sir.
we will first welcome him in between, and then we can continue again.
Sure,
Sorry
sir.
for the interruption.
No problem.
Manish, can you just put on your video? Are you available over here on the video?
Yeah, I'm on.
Ma'am, 1 minute के लिए screen share बंद कर देंगे, Padmashri ma'am. Okay, let it be. We'll shorten the screen. Okay. Good evening, Manish sir. Thank you for joining us and taking your time off from a busy schedule and giving your views on the topic of the day, as well as what all the CP study circle should be doing. Since you have joined as chairman of WIRC, I have seen that you are coming out with so many CP studies, so many webinars and all on virtual mode. That is just for enhancement of the professional people of our institute. So nice of you to do that. I welcome you to our CP study circle today, and I request you to kindly just address our meet with your words for the day. Yeah, Manish sir, can you please?
Thank you, Sureshji. First of all, for inviting me today. It's really a great pleasure for me to be at Bandra Kurla Study Circle. Since the inception, when the study circle formed, every year I'm visiting this study circle and learning something new from the study circle. One of the vibrant study circle, and we used to meet in MMK College earlier. good golden days, I should say. Now we are meeting virtually. So all my old friends Ramesh Shetty, Ashok ji, Jamil bhai, Jitendra Mangesh ji, and many more, Kirti madam. So it's really great to meet you after a long time. Manoj ji is here. So I'm not naming all of them, but really you are doing fantastic job. And the topic what you have selected is need of the hour, that is accounting standard for non-corporate entities, that is level 1, 2, 3, 4, what Padma Shri madam is going to talk. And she is, I'll tell you, one of the fantastic faculty on this. Last year in the month of January, not last year, I should say January 21, WIRC has come out with a publication called Model Financial Statement for Non-Corporate Entities. And after that, in January, April, again that level has been changed, and we have received request from Delhi ASB that we want to revive this book. And Padma Shri again taking a lead in this revision of this book, and this book is almost ready to be published, maybe probably next week or within 10 days we are going to release the book. So hats off to the dedication of Padma Shri madam. So she has most insight, and definitely she will cover the model financial statement also in today's presentation. That's what I hope. So members will understand the things better. But at WIRC also, we have taken various initiatives, and for the benefit of the members, we have started WOW series, where we are inviting women faculty on second Wednesday of every month. We have started with package series, where we are discussing about technology on every third Thursday of the month. Next month, we are going to start learning from the legends. It will be again a fire chat show, where you can learn from the life experience of a legend, a chartered accountant who may have started his journey from articleship and now he became a legend. So it will be encouragement. And the first legend who is going to share his life journey with us will be none other than Bansi S. Mehta sir. In next month, we are going to release, we are going to have that chat show. So keep watch of the same. Newsletter also, we have made changes this time, and we have started with SEBI, RBI and M&A merger and acquisition updates also. And we have converted this into HTML format, which will be easier to find what you want to read. You read only that portion instead of going through the entire newsletter. Next month, third week of June, we are going to start with CFO Forum. This Friday, we are launching a series, a long duration course on technology, that is a data analytics with the help of Python and SQL. It is a 60 hours learning course. The day when we announce this course, within a week time, we have to close the registration. The response is so overwhelming. So we have announced another batch, which is going to start on 25th June. Before start of the first batch, we have launched second batch. And again, the second batch is also near to full. Only 10 registrations are left in this program. Apart from that, we have also started mentorship program, where a mentor like Padma Shri madam, if you want to learn accounting standard auditing, so you can choose her as a mentor and take training from her as mentee, maybe full-time training of 6 months or 1 year, or need-based training or need-based guidance from her. So this, you can register yourself on a mentorship portal on WIRC portal mentorship tab. So you can take this benefit, which is available, and many chartered accountant, many senior CAs are ready to help a junior chartered accountant on this. We have also started a portal called Khoj, where a woman chartered accountant who do not want to work full-time, want to work from home or maybe part-time or on assignment basis, can list themselves on a portal, and where a CA firm who want to hire them for their services can approach them, and this is the way it is going to work. So you can also go to the tab called Coach on WIRC website and take the benefit of the same. Looking at the scenario of COVID, we have started a wellness series in the month of May. The last of the series in the series will be tomorrow, 4 to 6, where we are going to discuss, our doctor is going to discuss how you should break your stress and what should be your diet to break the COVID-19 scenario. WIRC is also this year is techno savvy, and we have started Telegram channel. You can subscribe to same. We have also started uploading a short videos of update, and various program videos are also there on our YouTube channel. You can subscribe the same and take the benefit of the same. Apart from that, lastly, I want to share one thing is that WIRC this year has started a program called TEL, Train, Earn and Learn. Sureshji will be the right person to tell about this. He is also one of the faculty for the same. So where we have designed a 36-hour course, 12 session, 3 hours each, where we will cover how to file GST return, income tax return, TDS return, how to file income tax, how to make an entry in the Tally, Excel, and some soft skill to undergraduate students who are not pursuing CA course. After undergoing this 36 hours of training, certificate of participation will be given to them. And then their profile we will list on our WIRC website. And after that, they will be ready to work at CA office as a trainee for next 1 year. And there they will get a experience of working practically in a firm. So this will solve. Many CA have called me once I took over as chairman saying, sir, article nahi milte hai. We are facing challenges. To some extent, this trainee are enthusiastic, want to learn something from you. You can hire them. And if you are really interested in hiring this kind of trainee, you can write to us at wirc@ici.in. So the first batch of this kind of student will be out by 15th or 20th of June. That's what our target is. Till 20th June, we will train at least 700 to 800 students of undergraduate. If you're really interested, write to us, reach out to us. And of course, whatever your suggestions are and whatever you expect from your WIRC, you can always write to me. Anytime I am available 24/7 at your service. So thank you very much, Sureshji, for giving me the opportunity to interact. And I'm extremely, my apology and extremely sorry, Padma Shri Madam, for taking some time out of your session. So thank you very much.
No, sir,
Thank
that
you.
was very hearty, and it was the improvements and the things that you're doing is really very much welcomed by each one of us. I guess we're all really very happy with the things that are being done. Thank you so much for that.
All these are possible because people like Madam you, Sureshji, and Ramesh Shetty sir, all are helping us for our initiative selflessly. Only just I have to give a call कि मैडम ये करना है, या सुरेश जी को बोला सर ये करना है, तो never he never thought for a second. He said yes, हो जाएगा. So this is the what support I am getting. That's why all these are possible, and hope to get the same kind of support in future.
Yes, sir, sure.
Thank you so much, sir, for giving your time and doing so much during pandemic also. People used to think कि pandemic में कैसे क्या होगा, लेकिन आप जिस तरह से कर रहे हैं, sir, it is just adorable and completely. I give thumbs up to you. Thank you so much for giving your time and coming here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We can have a picture with him if everyone can put on their videos, please.
Yeah.
Please Please put on your videos once we can have one picture with our chairman. Yes.
सर ये काम आपने अच्छा किया, अब लग रहा है कि शायद फिजिकल मीटिंग में बैठा हूँ।
क्या करें, आजकल सर ऐसे ही चल रहा है, नहीं तो पता ही नहीं चलता है। मैं तो लोगों को बोलता हूँ वीडियो कम से कम ऑन रखो, ऑडियो ऑफ रखो, लेकिन फिर भी लोग नहीं करते हैं, तो इट्स नॉट इन आवर कंट्रोल, because that gives us a feeling that we are in a physical meeting actually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Manoj is also here. I'm meeting after a long time. Manoj ji, Manisha.
Nice seeing you, sir. Nice seeing you and hearing you. Thank you.
Shetty sir also, Atmanand Shetty ji. After long time, I think 2-3 साल हो गए उनको तो देखे हुए।
अब सर फिजिकल मीटिंग चालू होएगी तो आप फिजिकल के लिए बुलाएंगे ना, तब सबसे मुलाकात होगी।
Definitely.
Thank you so much for joining once again, sir. And with this, we can give the session to Padma Shri Madam to continue with her.
Thank you so much, sir.
Can I share the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can.
Please.
Continuing with the same, we are now on level 2. So we looked at level 1, what are the criteria for level 1. And then now we come back to level 2. These are entities which are not level 1, but fall in one or more of the following categories. What are the categories? All the entities in commercial industrial business activities whose turnover excluding other income is more than 50 crore but does not exceed 250 crore. So if it's more than 250 crore, it becomes level 1, and if it is between 50 to 250 crore, then it becomes level 2 in the immediately preceding accounting year again. So we have to always keep a check on the immediately preceding turnover, immediately preceding year turnover. We need to always have a check on that, and then we have to decide for the next year. So when we start for the year under audit or year under the preparation of the financial statements, first thing we have to check is the last year turnover, and based on that the classification will be determined, because classification once determined will also have an impact on certain disclosures and certain applicability as such as also. And all the entities commercial industrial business undertaking which is having a borrowing of more than 10 crore but not in between 50 crore. So there it was more than 50 crore is level 1. Here it is 10 to 50 crore, between the bracket of 10 to 50 crore. And again, the holding and subsidiary entities of any of the above, that's something which is similar to the example that we discussed for level 2. Level 3, non-company entities which are not covered under level 1 and 2. So that 250 and 50 and 10 other than that, but fall into the next category. What's the next category? Again, the turnover other than the other income is more than 10 crores but not more than 50 crores here. So that's the next category, and borrowing is between 2 crore to 10 crores. So and whatever is not covered under 1, 2, 3 is obviously everything is 4. So if we have to simply tabulate in terms of turnover, everything where the turnover is more than 250 is level 1, borrowing more than 50 crore is level 1, between 250 to 50 to 250 and borrowing 10 to 50 is level 2, and then whatever is more than 10 to 50 turnover and then borrowing between 2 to 10 is level 3, and below that everything is level 4. However, even if an entity is in level 2 as such by turnover criteria, however, if it falls under any of the first 2 categories, then it will again be level 1. So it's a combination of everything. We'll have to keep that in place, and we have to keep that in mind, and accordingly we need to discuss and decide. So it's better that for the purpose of documentation, we make a very small simple checklist or make an Excel sheet. We all are good at Excels, I know, because day and night we are on it. So if we can make a small Excel if and but formula, and then one junior guys, when they just feed in the data, and based on that if they say that okay, This is the determination of level 1, level 2, level 3. Accordingly, the following will be applicable. It will be easy for us to document also. Going to AS applicability chart, this I have straight picked from the announcement itself, which is of the 31st of March. So I have just copy pasted from there because that's been nicely presented and it is useful. So AS1 level 1, 2, 3. So we have not plotted AS1 here, sorry, level 1 here, because everything is applicable. I've taken out level 1 and put in 2, 3, 4 because that's more of where you see applicable, not applicable. If we add a column of level 1, by default everything is applicable. So just taken out the column for the easy understanding. AS1 because that is accounting policy, everything applicable. 2 inventory, that's everything applicable. Cash flow everywhere not applicable. It's only applicable to level 1. Cash flow is not applicable to 2, 3, and 4. 4 is applicable by default because that's changes and in accounting estimates and things like that. And AS5 is also applicable because of the prior period and other adjustments that we time and again think about. 7 is something that is applicable if you have construction contract, obviously. 9 by default applicable because revenue is the major consideration. 10 PPE or FA, what you call. Level 2 completely applicable. Level 3 is applicable with certain disclosure exemptions, that those all we will see a little bit later. And level 3 it is applicable with disclosure exemption again, because sorry, this column heading should be level 4 here, so that's a mistake. So this has to be, this is also applicable with certain disclosure exemptions. AS11 for level 2, it's completely applicable if at all it has foreign exchange transactions related. Level 3, if it is applicable, then with certain exemptions. Level 4, it is also applicable with certain exemptions. AS12 is applicable to all the 3. 13, that is investment, is applicable to 2 and 3. And for 4, it is applicable with disclosure exemption. For 14, that is merger and acquisition, is applicable to 14, that is amalgamation, is applicable to 2 and 3. And for 4, it is not applicable. So there's a note also, we'll come to that note. AS15, we all know that complete AS15 is not applicable to all the level 2, 3, 4. So there are lots of exemptions to 2. Exemptions continue further for 3, and for 4 it is further relaxed, and it also depends on the number of employee that we will also see in detail. 16, it's applicable if at all the entity has leases. 17 is completely not applicable to any of them. 18, which is related party, is applicable to level 2, and 3 and 4 it's not applicable. For 19, it's again for 2 it is applicable with exemptions, with certain disclosure exemptions, because it's not a simplistic thing that is easily applicable everywhere. Then 3, for level 3, it's applicable with disclosure exemption, and for 4, it is applicable with disclosure exemption again, because not all the disclosures of leases are completely applicable over here. As we saw in 16, which is borrowing cost, it's again based on whether it is there or not there, it is completely so based on those it will be applicable. 20 is not applicable because there's no related matter in all these 2, 3, and 4, which is EPS. And 21, it is saying not applicable, and there is a note also. Now that is when we raise that question when we are talking about level 1 as to how it will become applicable and how do you consider whether it is a holding subsidiary or otherwise. So that question is getting answered over here. Then 22, that is DTA, is applicable to even Seg 2 and 3. And then for 4, it's not applicable. Now, it's applicable with only respect to current tax related provisions. One of the things that we see is that mostly in 2, 3, and 4, I would say 22 is largely not applicable. If at all, there are no major adjustments on account of disallowances or something of that sort. Otherwise, because depreciation, ESOP, these kind of items are not there in these balance sheets. Those are the main triggering items for DTA, DTL calculations, as we know. If these items are there, if these items are not there, then the triggering of those will not be generally there other than items of disallowability, because anyways, the depreciation rates that will be picked up for other than company will be straight income tax rates. But there are very few cases, maybe you can say 2%, where they will pick up a different rate, justify it, and then they will go on and things like that. But that's quite rare. So I think it's largely if the disallowances and other things, the timing differences that we talk about, like 43B gratuity or leave encashment or something, if that's not there on a heavier side, then it's only a certain portion of DTA that will be applicable. 23 actually goes hand in hand with 21, and that's how it's whether it is applicable or not, that needs to be seen accordingly. Then 24 is not applicable because that's a completely not applicable standard. 25 again not applicable to all the three, because it's interim financial reporting. Generally these entities do not do any kind of interim financial reporting, so that's again not applicable. 26 it's applicable to 2 and 3, but it's not applicable to 3 completely. There are many disclosure exemptions that will be there. 27 again goes along with 21, 23. JVs, how it has to be accounted for, it's largely not applicable, and there are certain notes with respect to the same. 28 once again, it's for 2 it is applicable with certain disclosure exemption, 3 again with disclosure exemption, and for 4 it is completely not applicable. And ultimately 29 as such, because it deals with provisions and contingencies, by principle it is applicable. So disclosure exemptions are available to all the 3 levels other than level 1, because it's lying down the principles of accrual and provisions. So in principle it is applicable, but not the detailed disclosures. There are these notes that are relevant because we have been referring to these notes of note 2C and 2D again and again. So what does note 2C talk about? In case of level 4 non-company entities, generally there are no such transactions that are covered under AS 14, that is accounting for amalgamation or jointly controlled operation, or anything that is controlled or mentioned in AS 27, financial reporting of interest in joint venture. Therefore, these standards are not applicable to level 4 entities. However, if there are any such transactions, they have to apply the principles of the same standard. So always there used to be this ambiguity, when any announcement came, it used to have a question mark. It is not very clearly written. If it is not there, if it is there, where to go, whether I should do this, whether I should do that. So these notes actually clarify. Generally, it is not applicable. However, if such transaction is there, please go and apply the same principle. So it actually puts into rest all the arguments, and it says that, okay, go ahead and just comply with it the way you will comply with it otherwise also. Note 2D also talks about consolidated financial statements and the accounting for associates, which is AS 23, and then 27 again reporting for interest in joint venture, and the 25 and 25 note number 25 is interim financial reporting. So all these are largely not required by these. However, relevant AS is applicable only if non-company entity is required to elect or prepare and present consolidated financial statement or interim financial report. Let's dwell upon this for a minute. So the first 2 lines says that it's largely not applicable. The last line says that the relevant AS will be applicable only if non-company entity is required. Who requires? So as per this announcement, it's not very clear. One is that whether it requires. So it is not making it mandatory to do the consolidation. So it is not required. However, if it is in a foreign jurisdiction or something where it is required, so one may do that. If they do that, then follow this principle. Or the second portion is it elects to prepare the financial statements. If it says it elects to prepare the financial statements, that means you're opting to prepare for consolidation. Now that's when in the level 1 entity, when we're talking about, we had an example of entity A is a partnership firm or a LLP. Now that's holding majority shares in a company of say 51%. And then that is needed to consolidate. How do you consolidate is the next question. Line by line consolidation? yes, you may have to apply the same principles of line by line consolidation or the equity method consolidation in case of AS23. If you have, if the entity is an associate, that is 20% or significant influence as per the definition. That's something that you will have to look at. However, to my best knowledge, none of the entity which is other than a corporate entity or the company formed under Companies Act has as yet I have seen opting for a consolidated financial statement. Now, when someone may elect for or opt for presenting the consolidated financial statement, yes, to obtain some borrowing, to take some advantage of showing a better picture to the entire world, or to the banker, or to some investor. So if it is a good going company and it has few investments, and it has a good value to it, and if there are other investors who are looking into in that entity, so one may always opt to prepare a consolidated financial statements. And if they prepare a consolidated financial statements, then you don't have to go anywhere else but use the same principles as stated in 21 or 23 is what this announcement talking about. Coming to AS relaxations and exemptions list. Now, what I've tried to do over here is that I've not listed down the entire accounting standard and said what all is applicable. Rather, I've picked up what all is not applicable. So in the announcement, if you see, there is para number that is mentioned. Obviously, para 2A of this standard, para 2.3 of this standard. So I have just put it in a simplified manner so that when you go to para 2A, what do you see? You can see over here as to what is the disclosure exemption. And again, the chart here is as is standard wise. Here what is applicable and what is not applicable and what is the exemption is only that we are talking about. Okay, so when we come to AS10, which is PPE, there is a para on encouraged disclosure. So it says that what is encouraged to be disclosed, that is carrying amount of temporarily idle PPE, gross carrying amount of any fully depreciated PPE, each revalued class of PPE carrying amount of the asset if they are carried under cost model, and carrying amount of PPE retired from active use and not held for disposal. So this is encouraged disclosure. All these things are encouraged, so good to go, and that is exempt for level 3 and level 4. So it is still applicable for level 2 and it is not applicable for 3 and 4. Okay, that's what is the para reference that it is given to, and that is the text that is actually applicable to not applicable to level 3 and level 4. AS11, if there is no foreign currency transaction, obviously entire standard goes for a toss. You don't have to look at it at all. However, if there are foreign currency expenditure, you have import, export, or any transactions that pertains to foreign currency, and then you have to do a revalorization at the end of the day and end of the year and things like that, definitely AS11 will be applicable because principles laid down there you have to use. Para 44 deals with again encouraged disclosure. What's encouraged disclosure? It talks about the risk management policy, currency risk management policy. So so we are talking about non-company entity. Let's take an example of level 1 entity. Okay, level 1 and level 2 entity. It's either listed or it is going to be listed, or it is such large that it is more than 50 crore or 250 crore. So it's of a sizable, like even some companies won't have that much turnover. So that kind of a company. So then they are saying that, okay, how do you manage your monetary risk? That has to be, it is encouraged that you disclose that also. Now that the encouraged disclosure is not applicable to level 3 and 4. It's still, it's an encouraged disclosure for 1 and 2, and it's not necessary in 3 and 4. So it's not a mandatory disclosure. So what we saw in 10 PPE and 11, both are not mandatory even now. However, these are encouraged disclosure. However, for 3 and 4, even encouragement is not there. That means it's not necessary to be disclosed. That's how you can conclude on it. Coming to AS13, that is accounting for investments. There's a para 35F. What does it speak about is other disclosures as specifically required by the relevant statute governing the enterprise. So in the entire disclosure, so in the investment, you will talk about trade, non-trade, quoted, unquoted, market value, and all that. And whatever is extra that is required by the governing statute, that also has to come out. Say, for example, if it is a stockbroking entity based on a SEBI circular, you need to disclose certain things based on the investment criteria. Now, if it is a bank, you have to have the classification in investment and you have to show how you have invested, where you have invested, and certain other related policies also. So those are as governed by the statute, which is over and above the normal as required by the standard. This relevant thing is not applicable to level 4. Level 4 are tiny entities where the borrowing is less than 2 crore and where the turnover is also less than 10 crore. So this kind of additional requirement is not required to be fulfilled. For all other 1, 2, and 3, if there is any such thing, if the governing body is talking about that, then it needs to be disclosed. Coming to AS15. AS15, I would say, is a marathon standard. First, when it was published, we all thought, especially I think I can talk about me and so few of my friends, we all thought, what is this? Is this a standard in itself or is it a book in itself? But now we are used to that all the standards are like that. But then because we have evolved to that era, so I think this is one of the standard which goes on and no one can remember in which para what is written. So there are certain relaxations. Let's look at the relaxations specifically, because those are more relevant here. So basic criteria. If average number of employees during the year, okay, average number of employees during the year is less than 50 of level 2 and level 3 non-company entities and level 4 non-company entity, and level 2 and level 3 non-company entities. And in case of level 4 non-company entities, irrespective of number of employees, they are exempted from the following applicability. Okay, so level 1, everything is applicable. Level 2 and level 3, look at the number of employees. If it's less than 50, then these things will not be applicable. Case of level 4, irrespective of the number of employees, none of these are applicable. That's how it is. Para 11 to 16, which talks about recognition measurement of short-term accumulating compensated balance, which are non-vesting. We are talking about leave encashment here, which is accumulation of leave encashment and the valuation thereof. That portion with respect to the actuarial valuation, that's not directly applicable. Para 46 to 139, discounting of amounts that fall due more than 12 months. That is the discounting of the long-term liability. So we are actually cutting it into short-term and long-term. So that portion is not applicable. 117 to 123, which is presentation and disclosure of post-employment benefit, defined benefit, obligation, asset and cost thereon. So all the detailed disclosure that you have, that is not applicable there. 50 to 116, which is post-employment defined benefit obligation, that is not applicable. 129 to 131, recognition measurement of long-term employee benefits. So basically everything that is dealing with discounting, actuarial valuation and certain things, all those things will not be applicable to 2, 3 and nothing to 4 at all. That's about AS15. Yes, it is complicated. We need to go back, these paras being very long. I've just tried to crisply put it into 2 to 3 lines instead of reproducing, because they have a number of how to calculate, when to calculate, what are the rates to be used, what is to be done, what are the disclosures, the tables and all that we know. So which are actually applicable to all the level 1 entities, the detailed disclosure completely. But those things are not applicable over here if it is less than 50 or for level 4, irrespective of the number of employees. Coming to AS19, para 22 is not applicable, which says that the lessee is required to make the following disclosures in case of finance lease. So the reconciliation between minimum lease payment, MLP, which we call, at the balance sheet date and the present value. In addition, enterprise also to be disclosing reconciliation between that table that we make, difference between MLP and the present value, the not later than 1 year, 1 to 5 year and more than 5 year, the small table that we make in the financials, that's not applicable to be disclosed to level 2, 3 and 4 entities. Okay, and that too specifically if you are a lessee under a finance lease. So let's understand I'm a lessee under a finance lease. So first of all, I have to classify it into finance and operating lease. If it's finance lease, and then I am on the lessee side, and this disclosure is not applicable to me. Total number of future minimum sublease payments expected to be received under non-cancelable subleases at the end of the balance sheet. General description of the lessee's significant leasing arrangements, including but not limited to the following, that is basis of contingent rent payment, existence in terms of renewal or purchase options and escalation clause, restrictions and all those things. So the detailed table and the detailed descriptive note that we put in case of all large companies, those things are not applicable in case of level 2, 3 and 4 entities. Continuing on AS 19, para 25, in case of finance leases, in case of lessee, I think, yeah. So again, in case of lessor and in case of lessee, so the similar transactions and the similar details that have to be put in, that's not applicable again here on the lessor side also. Para 37, that is also not applicable. That is the reconciliation between total gross investment in the lease at the balance sheet date, present value of minimum lease payments receivable at the balance sheet date. And in addition, enterprise should also make the above disclosure, which is actually the table that we make. Those things are again not applicable. General description of the significant leasing arrangements of the lessor, that is not applicable again. And accounting policy adopted in respect of initial direct cost, that's also not applicable to be given. Now level 2 entities, it's not required to comply with para 37A and F, that's the table and the general description. 3 and 4 are not required to be complying with any of these. So that's the difference. And then in case of further in case of para 46, again these in case of lesser in case of operating lease is also not applicable. And again for lesser, it is level 2 entity, the para B and para D is not applicable, and in case of level 3 and 4 it is nothing is applicable. So as we all know, AS 19 is into two pieces. One is operating leases and one is finance leases. Then it talks about the lesser side, then it talks about the lessee side on operating lease and the finance lease. So everywhere these detailed disclosures actually are not applicable, and then for level 4 though nothing is applicable, but for level 2 and 3 certain disclosures are not applicable and only minimal disclosures are applicable. Coming to AS22, which is DTA, DTL. It is applicable to all entities, and in brief we discussed that how it is applicable to each of the entity, because certain things are not applicable if there are not many such items. If everything is at par, then there is very less DTA or DTL that you will recognize, because everything is at par, because your tax in effective rate will also be similar, because you don't have huge differences. Now there will be calculation differences if you have tax exemptions, tax holidays for certain year, and then resumption of tax for later years. So there are guidances issued by ICI in terms of that. So that has to be applied for any of the such cases are there. What is applicable to level 4 non-company entity is that where it defines the current tax, how to determine the current tax, and then what is the tax expense, that's P&L item, and then what is the measurement of the current tax, and then to set off asset and liability, that is advance tax and provision. Only this portion, that means the disclosure portion, means how to do the disclosure and how to do the calculation. Only this much portion is applicable to level 4 entities. Everything else is not applicable to level 4 entity. Important to note over here is there is a transitional requirement mentioned here. In case of first occasion, if a non-company entity is getting classified as level 4 entity, the accumulated DTA or DTL appearing in financial statements of immediate previous accounting period is to be adjusted against opening revenue reserves. What is revenue reserves? I would tend to understand this as free reserves. and not any kind of capital or earmarked or statutory reserves. This will be in mostly free reserves. So let's take an example and understand. If it is a level 4 entity, what are the things that are applicable? How to calculate the current tax, that is the latest rate to be used, and what are the items to be used, where it is to be presented, and ultimately setting off of the admin tax with respect and the provision for tax. That's the only requirement that's applicable. In case of level 2 or 3 and 1 and 2 and 3, everything else is applicable. So say for example, someone was in level 2 and he used to actually use a different depreciation rate for the purpose of books of account, and for the purpose of income tax he used to have a different tax rate. Also he had 43B differences on account of gratuity. He is more than 50 employee, let's assume that. So he had gratuity provision difference, that is whatever is paid is only allowed, so he had 43B differences also. So he had accumulated depreciation, and he had accumulated DTA on account, DTA DTL on account of accumulated depreciation, also certain amount of DTA DTL on account of the gratuity of the 43B differences. Now in the year in which he comes down from level 2 to level 4 or from level 3 to level 4, there will be a DTA DTL that is sitting on his books as a opening balance. What is to be done with that? That is what this transitional requirement is talking about, that specific DTA DTL is to be adjusted against the opening revenue reserve. So revenue reserve, I assume it has to be a free reserve. That means it is not earmarked or it is not a capital reserve anywhere. So I think that that's very relevant and very apt in case someone is going to a level below. Intangible assets, that's 26. What is not applicable to level 4 entities? Other than this, everything else is applicable to 1 to 3. What is not applicable to level 4 is financial statement should disclose the following for each class of intangible asset, that is reconciliation of opening and closing, impairment losses, and impairment losses reversed during the year. And enterprise is encouraged to but not required to give fully description of any amortized intangible asset that is still in use. So this is something very similar to PPE, that these things are not applicable in case of level 4 entities. Coming to impairment, in case of level 2 and level 3 non-company entities, they are allowed to measure the value in use on the basis of reasonable estimate thereof, instead of computing the value in use by presenting by present value technique. What is this? Let us understand. When we come to impairment, if there are triggers or indicators of impairment, if there are indicators of impairment, we have to test that is the CGU, cash generating unit, and all that we know. If there is an indicator for impairment, then we have to start testing for the impairment. And when we test impairment, then we will have to have the value in use and a carrying amount. So when we are determining the value in use, otherwise it says that it has to be by the present value technique. The value in use has to be determined by the present value technique, that is by preparing cash flow DCF and all that, discounted cash flow and all that stuff. However, in case of level 2 and 3, it is saying that it is allowed to measure the value in use on the basis of reasonable estimate. So it may not have to go to the present value technique. It can be done by the reasonable value technique. Consequently, if level 2 or 3 non-company entity chooses to measure value in use by not using present value technique, relevant provision of AS 28, that is discounting, etc., is not applicable. So also the relevant disclosures, the relevant discounting, everything is not applicable. That's what this says, and this is only applicable to level 2 and 3. So impairment as such is not applicable to level 4 over there. Coming to the next related exemption, if an impairment loss for individual asset or CGU is recognized or reversed during the period and is material to the financial statements of the reporting enterprise, they should disclose reportable segment to which the asset belongs, and based on the entity's primary reporting format. So that is a consequential amendment or consequential disclosure that is required in case of this one. In case of AS 17. So that's how the AS17 is also not specifically applicable. So these things that are relevant in AS17, that is also not applicable. Further, this details of the CGU, because we said that the value in use can be calculated on certain basis. So consequently, description of CGU, product line, and all that detailed disclosure in terms of if there is an impairment, and the key assumptions for the recoverable amount of assets, and all that description that we give in case of impairment is triggered. All those things are not applicable in case of level 3 and level 4 entities at all. Coming to the last standard, which is provisions, contingent liabilities, and contingent asset. Let us have a look at what is applicable and what is not applicable. An enterprise should disclose for each provision carrying amount. So this is a reconciliation at the end of this thing, that is opening, plus or minus addition and closing. And anything that is unused is reversed. So this disclosure is not applicable for 2, 3, and 4. It's applicable only to level 1. Also, for each class of provision, for each provisions, brief description of nature and obligation of expected timing of any resulting cash flows or economic benefits. That is, when is the cash flow expected? This is in case of contingent liabilities that we are looking at largely. And in case of there is certainty, uncertainty, the details and the major assumptions used. And in case of any expected reimbursement, how is that going to be treated? All these disclosures that are required. Otherwise, in terms of the provisions, the contingent liabilities, those things are not applicable in case of level 2, 3, and 4 entities. I think that's largely about all the amendments in all the standards. Few things that I would like to just emphasize over here. I have few important points, the key takeaways, you can say. So few things that we have to think that now. One is format of the financial statements, as we discussed, and Manish sir also said that we are in the process of revising the model financial statements to make it compatible with this announcement. Actually, when we made it, it was not that this announcement was not there in place, but then when we actually, after publishing, this announcement has come in place, so certain modifications or changes we are making to that. What is the format of financial statements that we should have? So since we do not have any specified format of financial statements, lineage or Q is taken from Schedule 3 financial statements, which is under IGAP, not the Ind AS one. So we have taken that, and then from there we have started to carve out the financials. Second thing is maybe that model financial statements is quite lengthy, and it gives quite a bit of best to have, but those are minimum to have, because we end up missing something or the other. Third thing, in that model financial statements, under each of the notes, so there are actually typical notes also there we have given. That's accounting policies. We have drafted few accounting policies and given choices, you can pick and choose. And so we have given under revenue, services, goods, and other income, everything. Whatever you have, you pick and choose, and you discard the other one. That's the way that it is made. Under each of the note, you will find a note which will say applicable to 1, 2, 3, applicable to level 2, level 3, level 4, not applicable to level 2, level 3, level 4, applicable to this, not applicable to this, not applicable to this. So under each of the note, you will find the table. So as you determine your level, which entity and which level you are falling into, accordingly you can pick and choose those tables as well. References are given. That is, if you want to go back and read the para of the accounting standard or Ind AS, sorry, not Ind AS, of the accounting standard, those references are also given. Say, for example, in related party, you will find that refer 18.25, that means refer standard 18 and para 25. So such references are also given. It's made with a view of ensuring complete level 1 entity type of a financial statement. So if you want to derive a level 4, many of the things that are not applicable, you have to keep deleting, and then you will come to level 4. Carefully look at each of the 10 standard tags, and then remove whatever is not applicable to you. Also, there are announcements of institute like on derivative instrument. So earlier there was AS 30, 31, 32, which was later on withdrawn. And then now there is Ind AS 109. 109 is not applicable over here. And then so the derivative instrument announcement still holds good because that is not withdrawn. So certain disclosures, foreign currency exposure, and certain disclosures that are coming over from there, they are also retained. Now you will say there is one more disclosure that is also continued and which is kept over there is MSME. Now MSME requirement is not coming from schedule 3, or it is not coming from the financial statements of a company. It is coming from the MSME Act, because MSME Act says that these things have to be presented in the financial statements if you have any MSME as a creditor. So that table of MSME, outstanding over then the requisite period, the interest payment and the closing balance, those things are again retrieved. So a thoughtful process is made so that we are encompassing everything, and whatever assumptions we have made or whatever additional things that we have added, deleted, we have actually made an assumption sheet also as to how this is to be applicable and what is to be applicable. A few of the other things, just for the knowledge of everyone, whether these can be used for, there is a long list of FAQ also. We tried to in the group which we're working on, say we were 12 to 13 people. So we have, each one of us has put up 3 to 4 FAQs, and we have kind of made up you can say some 20-22 FAQs also, as to how is this announcement working, what is it applicable, when it is not applicable, whether this model financial statements can be used for everything, can it be used for trust, can it be used for AOP, can it not be used for this, whether it can use it for alternate investment fund and things like that, and also whether this is mandatory, whether this is non-mandatory. So all those things we have tried to cover up over there. Another important feature in the revised publication will be a model auditor's report also, because that's taken from illustration 2 of SA 700. So model audit report also, because we often see that when we issue an audit report, we end up doing certain mistakes in that. So we kind of thought that why not give that also as a ready thing to just enable everyone to ensure that these things are available upfront and you don't have to search for anywhere. So everything is at one place, and then as an appendix you also have a complete announcement that is reproduced. So if you have any doubts, actually you can cross refer to it. I think it's going to be more useful because it is made to save time of hundreds of us, and to ensure that we all are compliant at all the times. That's the thought behind it. So that's why the references are given, and that references also is useful in case in future something changes, we can go there, check those references, and then we can make those amendments. And actually from the step 1 to step 2, that is how we are doing, because we did make our references at that point in time also, and now we are actually revisiting those references and updating those changes also. But then this is more comprehensive than step 1, but step 1 was a very good start, I would say. And this with the thoughts of Manish sir and Chintan ji, who is the vice chairman. So we are actually making it more comprehensive as well. So this is also more comprehensive, so you can definitely have a look at it when it is released. So having talked about the entire announcement, there are few points that you should always keep in mind. Level 2, 3, 4 entities are choose to allow. Now this is coming from the announcement itself. They are allowed to choose the exemptions they intend to avail, and which should not be misleading, and they have to make a disclosure of the same. So there are so many exemptions that are available. So level 2, 3 and 4 has to choose those, and then they have to list it down that these are the exemptions that I have chosen for. However, those exemptions should not be chosen with a intent to mislead the same, so that we have to very much be careful and take care of that. If level 2, 3 and 4 opt not to avail exemptions or relaxation, disclosure has to be made. So if you're not going for exemption, You can opt for full financials also. So the way we saw about consolidation, if consolidation is generally it is not applicable. However, you want to do consolidation, then you have to do as per the principles laid down there. So all the requirements therein will be required to be followed. That's how it is. So if you adopt, you have to give a listing. If you're not adopting, then you have to do everything in full spirit. You can't say that half of it I'll do and half of it I'll not do. But then if you're not taking certain exemptions, you have a choice of not taking certain exemptions. You can always do that. And then if you're not taking any exemption, then please do the full disclosure. If an entity is covered under level 1, subsequently ceases and gets covered under 2, 3, or 4, and it will not qualify for exemption or relaxation available to that level until it ceases to be covered under level 1 for 2 consecutive years. What does that mean? So there is a level 1 entity in year 2021, but it's 1920, but it ceases to it ceases to be a level 1 entity in 2021. It will not be eligible for any exemptions or relaxations unless it continues to be at 2 or 3 for 2 consecutive years. So exemptions will get applied to it from 22-23. So it can't avail exemption in 2021. It can't avail exemption in 21-22. So what is the intention and what is it does intend to cover? Is that the temporary ups and downs in business, you can't keep changing your balance sheet. So it's against the principle of consistency. So you might as well continue. And if you're seeing that for 2 years you have fallen down and that is where you continue to be, then take the exemption. Only for temporary ups and downs, don't go and keep changing everything from up to down and down to up and things like that. So that's the intention, is how we can see, because even AS1 talks about consistency. So that's where if it is for 2 years, if it is the case, then only you can go down and start taking the exemptions. So if you will in the given example, you will start getting the exemption only from 22-23. Non-company entities do not require to present CFS. AS is applicable only if entities requires or elects to prepare and present consolidated financial statements. So this we talked about in detail. This is something to be taken carefully, because this used to be a question with many companies as to how do I show my proper net worth. So if I have to show my proper net worth, then this is a way to actually up your net worth and show a proper net worth. There's no statute which provides for format of FS for non-company entities. So the best way is take from Schedule 3 and then go down the path. Entities who follow Ind AS, the classification criteria is obviously not applicable to them. So someone is under voluntary Ind AS, then all these things are just not applicable, because Ind AS goes one step further. So all these things are definitely not applicable. If entity desires to disclose information not required to be disclosed pursuant to exemption or relaxation, it should also disclose that information is in compliance with the relevant accounting standards. So it has to give a description. If you take the exemption, tell me what all exemption you are taking. If you are not taking exemption, give full disclosure. If you are opting for few and not opting for few, then please specify what is it that you are doing. MSME, which avails the exemptions and relaxations given to it, should also disclose by way of a note the level of MSME that it has complied with accounting standard. That's again the same principle. In case of non-compliance with AS, the chartered accountant should make appropriate qualification disclosure in the audit report. In case of tax audit as well. Now, that is most important. Many of us used to have this question mark, that in case of non-compliance with accounting standard, whether it should be there in the tax audit or it should not be there in the tax audit. However, I think this is a very good principle that is set out now. And if there is any non-compliance in accounting standard, state it in tax audit also, because of that, there can be an impact on the financial statements is something that it is making it very clear. Exclusion of charitable or religious organization from applicability of AS is permissible only if no part of the activity is commercial, industrial, or business in nature. This we all know from a long time. This actually stands good because if there is charitable, religious, or completely that kind of an activity. Even if a part of the activity is coming into commercial, industrial, or business nature, then accounting standard become applicable to them. Otherwise, they can use a cash basis or other basis that they have. Last but not the least, UDIN is required to be generated for the audit report of the financial statements of everything. So non-corporate financial non-company entities is no exemption, and this is general purpose financial framework. So please generate UDIN. So when we are doing it, then please generate UDIN if you are doing the audit of non-company entities. So I think that was largely what I had to share. We can have, if you have any questions, we can very much try to take that up.
Yeah, I think everyone is unmuted. If anyone has any question, you are most welcome to ask her. Ma'am, you were mentioning something about non-mandatory for AS 10 and 11.
Yeah.
Can you just give a bit more detail about it? I think it was for classification 2, 3, and 4, if I'm not wrong. Level 3, 2, 3, and 4.
For AS 10?
AS 10 and 11, both, I think. Foreign exchange, foreign currency expenses, and your
I'll come
PPE.
back to it.
Yeah.
What is not applicable to AS 10 in case of AS 10 is the encouraged disclosure. So there is an encouraged disclosure on certain things that is there in AS 10, which is about the carrying amount of temporarily idle PPE, gross carrying amount of fully depreciated PPE, revalued class of PPE, and carrying amount of PPE from active held, which is not held for disposal. So that means that's lying there as is. This is an encouraged disclosure even for 1 and 2.
Okay.
So if someone has not done, it's not non-compliance.
Okay.
It's an encouraged disclosure.
Not
But
a
this
mandatory
disclosure is
requirement.
not even encouraged for 3 and 4. So actually it is out of the window, completely not applicable. That's for 10.
Okay.
And for 11 also, there is an encouraged disclosure with respect to foreign currency risk management policy. So for level 1, it's encouraged disclosure that foreign currency risk management policy has to be there if you have large amount of foreign currency or related items. But for 3 and 4, it's not even encouraged. So 1 and 2, it has to be there. It's not has to be there. It is better to give. And for 3 and 4, it is not applicable.
I don't think we have any questions on the chat box also.
Yeah. Any questions other than these?
Anyone? Interested in any question? I don't think anyone has any questions. So can we end the session today for everyone? Kirti madam, will you do vote of thanks? Or you want me to do?
If you can, please.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Padmashri ma'am. Thanks so much for sharing your knowledge and helping us understand about AS applicability to non-corporate entities. You, in such short period, you have explained everything. You have covered all the accounting standards from 1 to 29. All the major standards also you have discussed, which are applicable to. The most important part which I can understand in this is we have to first understand which level the entity is coming, whether level 1, level 2, level 3, or level 4. Level 1, as you said, it is applicable to mostly all the accounting standards are applicable to level 1. It's only about level 2, 3, and 4, which we have to be very distinct whether it will come or not. Then you explain in detail about the leases also, accounting standard about leases, intangibles, foreign expenses, PPE, everything you have tried to cover in such short time in detail. And I'm sure it's going to help all of us to understand how these will become applicable from this year onwards as we have to use them, and how it will be, how accounting treatment has to be given. You even you also informed us about the MSME Act, wherever it becomes applicable, what is to be done over there. Then little bit you spoke about the format of financial statements also. So in short, I would say you have covered so much in detail in such a short span. And I'm very thankful to you for giving your time and making us all aware of the accounting standards for non-corporate entities. Thank you so much once again from the entire team from us. Jabbar Sheikh sir, will you like to say something?
Thank you so
there
much,
is-
Suresh ji, and thanks entire team for giving me the opportunity.
Yeah,
Sorry.
our team member Jabbar Sheikh would like to say something.
Sure, thanks.
He generally gives vote of thanks to all our, yeah. So I would give him the opportunity to do that.
Sure,
Yeah.
sir.
No, I really appreciate the way Madam Padmashri has given this presentation. She has covered a lot of aspects, specifically with respect to classification of non-entities, AS applicability chart, key takeaways, important points that are to be noted for all that. All these things have been put in a very clear-cut perspectives, and I have no doubt that the people in their day-to-day work, it will help them a lot of it. Thanks again, Madam Castro. It's been great to having you between us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am, for your time.
Thank you, ma'am.
And
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you very much.
We look
Thank you.
forward for more opportunities from
Yeah,
you.
more opportunities like that.
Yes.
Definitely,
very
sir. Available anytime. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
everyone. Have a
Thanks
great
everyone
evening. Thank you.
also for
Bye.
attending the session, and I hope you all enjoyed it. And it will be very useful for us in our future professional life. Thanks once again to everyone, each one of you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.